Below me lies the city of Tromso, well over 200 miles north of the Arctic Circle in deep northern Norway. It feels like you're taunting Mother Nature living this far north, but it's actually quite mild and beautiful. This part of Norway is kept warm from the Gulf Stream. It's a cosmopolitan city of almost 80,000 people. For 2 months in the winter, the sun doesn't rise, and cruise goers flock here to try and see the northern lights. But I'm here in the height of summer. It's 4:30 in the morning. It's not that the sun's just risen, it's actually never set. This is the land of the midnight sun. This is the land of some of the most unsettling vibes you've ever seen, nearing the 3 AM closing time. But the walk back to the hostel isn't bad. Tromsø is home to the northernmost professional football team in the world, Tromsø idrettslag, TIL. Welcome to the Tromsø Arena, a short walk from the city centre. One of the more picturesque grounds I've been to in my life. This is what the stadium looks like for most of the year. They even have ultras. I've heard they're a superstitious lot up here though. I mean, in 2003, 2 supporters, with the full backing of the manager, slaughtered a goat on the centre circle in the dead of night. Vintage Barclays era Morten Gams Pedersen was among the squad at the time. Basically, after losing game after game, the manager, Trond Johansen, received a mysterious phone call demanding a sacrifice in order to lift a curse on the club. Apparently, they had crossed the wrong minibus driver / shaman. In order to turn around the fortunes and start winning games, it had to be done. A goat on the centre circle. So they did. And the next game, they only went in 1-2-1, and they stayed up that season by a single point. Is it an effective tactic? Sacrificing goats. I'm just saying, it's better than anything Paul Lambert did in 2018. I feel like the most mental part of the story, and yeah, I'm still going on about it. They didn't know what to do with the dead goat that was just in their car, so they waited until the following spring, tied rocks to it, and dumped the carcass into a fjord. Anyway, Tromsø have won the Norwegian Cup twice, but never the league. They've even been relegated a couple of times in the past decade. The Norwegian League plays their regular season out of sync with the rest of Europe, from March to November in the summer. And this is why. When they do play in winter, like this 3-2 victory in Europe over Chelsea in the 1997 Cup Winners' Cup, it's a bit northernmost football team in the world. They lost the return leg of that game 7-1. Tromsø's rival, both in football and city terms, is Bodo, the Battle of the North when they play. You can piss on their logo and the urinals in the ground. And to put it into perspective, this local rivalry is an 8-hour drive away. Considering pints are a tenner, I'm in absolute shock at the amount of unfinished drinks. Might as well just be leaving fivers out on the table, lads. Quick scroll before the game kicks off. Out of the 2 squads, Aaron Olenare definitely has the most rogue career. This guy used to play for Stoke. Another ex-Cardiff player, 36-year-old centre mid. Christian Eriksen's playing. The away team, Molde, have brought a few dozen. Fair enough. It's a hell of a journey up here. I was starting to wonder if the kids nearly blowing their fingers off with fireworks and the minibus load of Molde are the best this game has to offer in the way of atmosphere. Now that looks better. Forza Tromsø are the club's supporters group. Founded in 2013 by a group of mates to improve the atmosphere, there's now over 900 members. Oh, did I mention this game is kicking off at 9:15 at night? They even reminded fans not to forget their sun cream. As an admittedly pale man, I feel like I'm fitting right in. The sun's not setting, so no real need for floodlights tonight. What cheap overheads. My first half review on Instagram is quite harsh. The football has been a bit crap. Scratch that, Christian Eriksen has put Molde 1-0 up. Absolute limb in the away end. I timed getting my half-time hot dog perfectly. If there's one thing I've learned about Norway in my one day here, they love hot dogs and gas station style convenience food. I've heard Norwegians hate queuing. It's like trying to herd sheep. To be fair, no one's rude with it. If I'm being honest, I don't think the Tromsø players are getting enough sleep in the midnight sun. Every pass and movement is backwards. Big chances are just being handed to Molde on a plate. The man with beautiful hair in front is getting upset. His hair smells amazing. This standard of football is grimly familiar to me. And it's so smooth, how does he condition it? The game finishes 2-0 to Molde, and to be fair to the Tromso fans, they never stop singing. The atmosphere has been quality, even if a few of them still look like they listen to Avicii. For me, classic, shit football, great fans dichotomy. Make an atmosphere because the football's hanging. Great experience. I know English football fans take the piss out of European ultras, but I think there's plenty of room in the football pyramid for a little bit of this. I leave the stadium just before 11:30 at night. Norway is by far the most expensive country I've ever been to. Even the pizza delivery firms have an SUV. But my main gripe is the high taxes on drinks. And on account of everyone being vaguely middle class, there's a lot of old bar one style drinking establishments, which still isn't as humiliating as having to type in the amount on the card reader. This pint was 11 quid. Tromso has a lively nightlife. I think they make up for the dark winter months by going out quite hard every summer. Didn't quite fancy the Johnny themed nightclub though. Finished the night at a rock bar instead. Summers in the Arctic have quite an impact on the old circadian rhythm. I find myself so full of energy, especially when leaving the bar into the glow of the 7-hour golden hour, where the sun just rests on the horizon all night. And I'll tell you what, I'm a huge fan of the 24-hour convenience. I was worried I might feel that familiar anxiety that you get walking home from the afters in the dawn light. But I don't. It just feels like Tromso. There are different rules here. Let's get this party started, shall we? It's a Ford Fiesta. Ahead of me lies a 400-mile journey to the northernmost point of Europe, around 9 hours behind the wheel. For comparison, it's almost a distance from London to Edinburgh. But there are no motorways this far north. This trusty wagon is my home for the next 3 days. The fjords are obviously breathtaking, and the air is the freshest I've ever smelt. A few hours in, and I've already stopped a dozen times. It's completely impulsive. Like if I don't stop and take it in for a while, I don't deserve to be here. I think this drive might take a little bit longer than I've planned. And even when I need to stop, for a coffee and a piss, I apparently step into a 70s time warp. I'm not joking when I say this vintage estate car caravan combo is the sexiest thing I've ever seen. I feel an unfamiliar pang of jealousy that they get to drive that on the road. Until I slide back into my Fiesta. God bless the spongy interior and alluring cherry scent. Would you believe me if I said I have a tattoo of a 2005 Ford Fiesta Finesse on my left arm? In the good old days, from before they turned cars woke. I can't even get my Spotify to connect, so I'm listening to Radio Norge and its excellent selections. The Norwegian ability to tunnel the mountain is second only to the dwarves of Middle Earth. The steep walls of the fjords mean it's the only viable solution for getting around. Sometimes you enter the tunnels amid pockets of sunshine and emerge to pouring rain. I've seen so many salmon farms where they're pumping them full of chemicals to make them as big as a child, probably. In 1940, Norway was swiftly occupied by the Nazis. In fact, the area around Narvik, just south of where I was in Tromso, saw the longest fighting of the campaign. Norwegian and Allied forces fought there for 62 days before surrendering or evacuating. The Nazi occupation saw widespread resistance. There's actually a great Norwegian film called The 12th Man about a saboteur come fugitive who is fleeing the Gestapo with help from the resistance. It's a beautiful, brutal film. I'd recommend it. And now, I'd actually only learned this after I arrived, as it's such an overlooked theatre of the war. But in winter 1944, fearing a Soviet advance through Finnmark, the northernmost territory of Scandinavia, the Nazis burned essentially every single building and boat and field and livestock north of Tromso. It was a cold-blooded, scorched earth campaign to restrict the enemy from being able to utilise anything in the province. Over 50,000 people were forcibly evacuated, some onto civilian or German death ships where infections and diseases were rife. An additional 25,000 people went into hiding in the mountains and caves. The evacuation was carried out so quickly that many locals were allowed only one bag to take with them. 100,000 mines were laid. Hitler was quoted as saying, "Compassion for the civilian population is uncalled for." So it's strange to think that almost every house or piece of infrastructure I'm passing has been built after 1945. That well over 20,000 square miles of livelihood, history and culture can be wiped off the earth for nothing. And now, Norway is one of the richest countries on earth per capita. There are also a hell of a lot of German boomers in motorhomes around. I suppose the Germans have gone from burning homes to burning rubber.
It's a very rogue company car.
Yeah.
Normally it's like a BMW or something.
We are working with construction.
What make is it? Like what brand is it?
It is Cadillac Civil.
I eventually make it to Alta. It's the northernmost city in the world with a population over 10,000. It's got about 15,000. I arrive as evening is approaching. But you wouldn't know it. I fill up with fuel and enjoy some food, including a dime bar bun with a taste of, I'm gonna miss you when I go home, fella. The Norwegian bakery is magical. The buns have cardamom in, they're the perfect texture, fluffy but not too sweet. To be honest, the Norwegians have a pretty solid 24-hour gas station thing going. 10 different kinds of hot dogs and the same number of condiments. I do wonder how many Muslims there are up here. How does Ramadan work if the sun doesn't set? Like, good luck fasting for 2 months, my friend. I decide to push on north. I can always park up and grab some sleep in the car before heading up to the Nordkapp. You're allowed to wild camp or park anywhere in Norway for up to 2 days, as long as you leave no trace, obviously. The weather looks miserable, but it isn't freezing. I've got plenty of thermals and I can always warm the car up beforehand. The scenery north of Alta is dramatically different to what I've become accustomed to. The steep fjords are a distant memory, replaced by Arctic forests and barren, bushy moorland. The landscape seems to be slowly thinning as I drive further north. I'm very deep into the Arctic now, and there is a certain point where trees stop being able to grow naturally. From fjords to fields to forests to no foliage at all.
With the shifting of landscape, I feel a shift inside of me.
Yeah, the mountains, fjords were beautiful, but of course they were, it's obvious. But the landscape I'm in now is beautiful in an unearthly, stark way. It's said, and I completely agree with this, that to be truly hot, someone has to look a little bit unconventional. They have to have a defining feature which lingers with you, sticks with you. A good recipe needs a dash of bitterness. Now, can I apply model philosophy to these landscapes? Well, I just did. This is my own geological Anya Taylor-Joy. The Arctic above the tree line is mystical landscape worthy of a different planet. And that's right up my street. The interior areas of Finnmark regularly drop to -40°C in the winter darkness. The coastal areas are more hospitable due to the warm Atlantic waters. This contrast between the two is also mirrored in the demographics. Norwegians, with their exalted history of seafaring, historically stuck more to the coasts. The indigenous Sami people are more often found inland. In fact, this area is characterized by 3 peoples, as there is also the Kvens, former Finnish peasants and fishermen who migrated into the area from the 18th century. The Sami people have been here for at least 2,000 years, but likely had a longer history hunting and gathering in northern Scandinavia. Some have even linked their ancestors with the Fosna culture, which is currently the first evidence for humans up here after the thawing of the last ice age. Before that, this area was an unsurvivable glacier. A quintessential and sacred part of Sami identity is the reindeer. However, herding them these days is a minor livelihood. The Sami peoples are quite varied. Traditionally, the sea Sami fished in the coastal areas. The forest Sami practiced a more sedentary lifestyle, combining hunting, fishing, and farming. The mountain Sami lived up on the fells and lived nomadically, following their reindeer herds around. Although there were many periods of friendly coexistence between the groups in the far north, from the 19th century, the Sami were subjected to racial, theory-based assimilation policies, similar to those enacted by the British in Canada and Australia. Shipping the children of the inferior culture off to boarding schools, denying them the right to their language and cultural practices. The Sami have protected rights these days in Norway, with their own parliament, in the village of Karasjok. You see their flag everywhere. This is their football shirt. I've had so much caffeine, and I'm enjoying the scenery so much, I simply don't stop to rest.
Well, I haven't got my tripod, but yeah, it is 20 to 1 in the morning. And there's a reindeer.
They have a reindeer stew up here, but all the food is so expensive. I haven't had the chance to try it yet. However, I did pick up some dried reindeer hair from a shop earlier. The never-ending dawn, combined with the transcendent landscape and stimulants, is sending me into a sort of quasi-religious experience, in a kind of trance state, sharply alert and absorbing the entirety of everything. The energy here at night on your own is frankly magical. So on account of my own inability to not resist the urge to stop and look around for a while, turning a 9-hour drive into a 14-hour drive and counting, I've accidentally stumbled across the most rewarding way of visiting the far north. Another win for winging it. There's no traffic on the road now, only pockets of camper vans resting up for the night in sporadic laybys. And still, I push on. In the centre of the road now, where it's nicest, I can see any potential headlights from miles away.
This is the tunnel to Nordkapp. It's 6.5 kilometers long, connecting the mainland to the northernmost point in Europe.
The northernmost point of Europe is actually on an island, so I'm not sure that it counts. I pass by the town of Honningsvåg and decide I might as well drive the 13 minutes to the Cape and sleep there. I've come too far now. Outside of the town, the road starts to climb. I hit a wall of mist. Once inside, I'm disorientated. I can't believe it's 1:30 in the morning. The winds bash at the sides of my Fiesta, a siren-like seduction through the steering wheel to veer me off the narrow road to my presumable death on the rocks below. I don't know, I think we've established I can't see shit. My earlier serene frame of mind has been replaced with manic absurdity. Like, George, how the fuck have you ended up here? I would presumably laugh to my death at least.
Oh, this is silly.
I can't see 4 meters ahead of me. A barrier is up, blocking the road. So I just go through the no entry sign into what I think is a car park. The Cape is a few hundred meters high and the storm outside is deadly. I even googled this.
It's so bad. It's currently 2:10 in the morning. I'm at the northernmost point of Europe. Welcome to Nordkapp. Welcome to Nordkapp, which is the North Cape in Norwegian. And before I go to sleep in my rental Ford Fiesta, I'm gonna have some food. Where'd it go? There we go. Yeah, so reindeer heart, dried, cured, maybe, I don't know. I've been told it's a delicacy, so I had to try it. Here we go. It smells like my dog's food, actually. Like the snacks I would give to Winnie the dog. I'm not even joking, but venison-y, I suppose. Reindeer heart. The heart is crazy to me. I'm not gonna lie. That's good shit. It's really good. It's like salty, gamey, rich. Like jerky, but gamier. My god. Dried reindeer heart. But dried makes it sound like it's gonna be. It's just jerky. It's jerky of the reindeer heart variety. I wonder if I'm gonna freeze to death tonight. See ya. Morning. It's nearly 6 a.m. I'm gonna drive off apparently it's raining for the next 2 days. I'm not going to get a good view of the Cape. The Cape Visitor Centre doesn't even open until 11 a.m. Should have done more research, to be honest. So I'm going to go look at the northernmost fishing village in the world. It's the only fishing village, working fishing village this far north, I think. Well, at least that's what they claim anyway, so I'll go have a look at that. And then hopefully head back south and find a coffee somewhere. How do I feel about the trip? I enjoyed yesterday. I enjoyed the challenge of getting here. Actually arriving, much worse than the actual driving itself. I have the emergency sugar-free Red Bull for the inevitable crash, but I only have to drive 3 hours to get back to Alta, where it's like 16 degrees as well. Because tonight is actually the 30th of June and England are playing Slovakia at 9 p.m. local time, I think. So I need to find a bar. It's all fun and games, isn't it? Just realised you have to pay actually to not only get to the car park and to enter the hall itself. So I'm definitely getting out of here. I'm done. So this is my third end of the earth, I think. Finis terrae in Latin. I've been to the end of Europe after El Camino on the western coast of Iberia, the end of Europe again on the Azores, and now the end of Europe in the Arctic far north. Velkommen til Skarsvåg, the northernmost fishing village in the world. Most of the 200-strong inhabitants work out on the ocean, fishing for cod off the chilly waters north of the Cape. The large processing centre dominates the townscape. They also hunt aliens. The red king crab was introduced to these waters by Soviet scientists in the 1960s. They're native to the North Pacific usually, and they're actually incredibly destructive to the local marine environment on account of a lack of their natural predator, the giant octopus. So from their first introduction in the Barents Sea off the coast of northern Russia, they have spread up to 30 miles a year, invasively hoovering up seabed life. And as of 2022, they have reached UK waters, and a lot of fishermen have made a lot of money, both in Norway and soon to be here. You wouldn't believe the price. It's still not even 8 a.m. on a Sunday, so I decided to see another village on the island before hunting down some breakfast. Well, after watching the herd. Gjesvir is the only place mentioned in Viking sagas out of all of Finnmark in the far north. The natural harbour breaks the cold Arctic waves, and the various small islands off the coast are home to substantial bird colonies. In fact, the name Gjesvir descended from Gerdfugl, the Norwegian word for great auk, a now extinct northern Atlantic flightless bird. That's right, viewers, we're really down to the obscure stuff now. They have a small shop, and again, not a single building here survived the Nazi scorched earth policy at the end of World War II. I mean, the road connecting it to the rest of civilization I entered on was only built in 1977. Before that, everybody travelled by boat. And this fact might blow your mind, but the easternmost town in Norway, of Vardø, a couple of hours drive away from here, is further east than Istanbul. Heading back through the moors, and I have to say my favourite spot on the entire island is the small fishing village of Kamoivia, perched in the crease of towering, vibrant green slopes. You can still see the mist, a couple of 100 metres high, that has been taunting me all morning, blocking my view of the Cape. Oh well, time for a coffee, a bun, presumably a hot dog, and a blast in the car back down to Alta. It's the following morning, and I'm up early in Alta to visit a 7,000-year-old UNESCO World Heritage Site. Yesterday, I stayed in a natural hotel and everything, which was nice. The drive was fine after a breakfast in my Red Bull. I also had my first waffle with brunost. Brunost is a brown Norwegian cheese which is naturally caramelized to a degree during the cooking process,
With the waffle, it's like the perfect balance between sweet and sour. I ended up watching the Bellingham Miracle at the hotel after a nap. The first carvings into the rock here at Alta date back to 5000 BC, and there are over 6,000 examples over a 5,000-year timeline of art. And this makes it the largest concentration of rock art by hunter-gatherers in Northern Europe. And when you remember just how far north I am right now, it's quite mind-boggling. Scenes of fishing by rod, net, in a boat. Animals mating. The humans here were very aware of the importance of resource sustainability and clearly gave spiritual significance to the circle of life and its fragility. Carvings of reindeer make up nearly half of the motifs, driving home just how important they were to the artists. You can see depictions of them within fences even, being herded, along with geometric patterns. These carvings were etched on smooth rocks by the water's edge. The land rose, resulting in the oldest examples now being well above sea level. When they were discovered in the 70s, they painted a number of the carvings in red to easily highlight them. However, now that decision has been criticised for preservation purposes. All in all, a very cool stop, but I really do have to get on. I need to drop the car off in Tromso by 5 at the latest, and I'm still hundreds of miles away. You know, there was a prisoner of war camp on that island. It's the last World War II thing, I promise. The weather is glorious today. I'm seeing the northern fjords in all of their glory. What was I saying yesterday about needing to be slightly unconventional to be hot? Bullshit, it's nonsense. Forget it. I'm just a basic horn dog. Well, I'm running late. I hope the rental agency don't get too arsey. Especially when I decide to take the ferry route, which saves me 2 hours of driving, but isn't any quicker. I am an hour late to drop the car off, but they don't mind. It's the bus back into town though. And what was I telling you about their tunnelling prowess? They even have entire roundabout networks underground. Most tourists come to Tromso around winter time for the northern lights rather than summer. And in recent years, the locals say tourism has gone way beyond sustainability. Corrupt local government in league with the greedy hotel sector. In fact, this year, a tourist bus was attacked with eggs apparently. I mean, I've even seen a picture of a tourist shitting in a private garden due to a lack of infrastructure in the surrounding villages and areas on Northern Lights tours. Lots of cruises come into town. They go straight onto coaches to go look at them. The classic modern development of the port area in industrial style. They've even utilised rust as an aesthetic this time. Another hotel going up. There's also a Commonwealth graveyard here with 34 casualties, mainly from the British Navy. They were killed on Arctic convoys to resupply the Soviets through the ports of Archangel and Murmansk, which were relentlessly attacked by the Germans. There's an English connection in Tromso's history as well. Odyssey of Halagoland was originally from the area around Tromso. His life was documented in the Anglo-Saxon Kingdom of Wessex in the 9th century. He told his biography to King Alfred. He was described as being from the northernmost lands of the Norwegians. He was a self-described rich man, possibly a chieftain. He was said to own 600 reindeer, cattle, sheep and swine, but his main wealth actually came from attacks of the local Finnas, or Sami, people. He was also a character on Vikings, which was one of those shows I don't know a single person who watched. Apart from my mum and dad, of course. Avid fucking viewers in their case. I also pop into the Arctic Museum on the history of hunting, trapping, whaling and exploring the wastes north of Tromso. It really just makes me want to visit Svalbard, the group of islands about 500 miles off the North Cape. They also have real artifacts from the final Barents voyage of 1597 in the hunt for the northeastern passage to China, which ended in the deaths of everyone except 12 after their ship got caught in ice on Novaya Zemlya off the north coast of Russia. Their untouched camp was found almost 300 years later by Norwegian seal hunters. Seal hunters like these. They've perfectly captured the passion of bashing innocent animals with a club. Entire walls are dedicated to the explorer Roald Amundsen. It's fair enough, to be honest. He's of Northwest Passage and South Pole fame. There's more walls on Nansen as well. To be honest, I suppose if you want some good Wikipedia explorers, here you go. I think I've talked enough on this. Especially this one, the English man who inadvertently started English and Russia relations while he was trying to find the Northeastern Passage. Right, get ready for my last day in Norway. My alarm was set for 4:15 AM this morning for my 6:30 flight. Quick bus over to the airport. I love getting up to sunlight. I feel like a go-getter, binging on my limited pool of serotonin all before noon. Lovely. If you're wondering where I'm going back to Oslo. I'm having a 24-hour blast there. The flights back to London were the same price, a day apart, so I thought I might as well see the city for one day. Another minimalist airport, Norway, and having only one day to see a city is surprisingly liberating. It might not seem like it, but it allows you to just focus on the moment. There's no point worrying about stuff you don't see, because that's going to be all of it. Just focus on making the most of your day, and that usually just means a hell of a lot of walking. There was a viral video recently advertising Oslo as a holiday destination.
I wouldn't come here, to be honest. Oslo is just not... I mean, is it even a city? You know, there's no exclusiveness.
Yes, very dry, very Norwegian, very good. But the video does have a point. The entire city is walkable, well connected and attractive. Would I go out of my way to come back? Probably not. Walking round, and I'm still unhappy about the price of everything. But that's just because I like drinking 5 to 6 beers, and I'm not a rich man. I think the best way to do Norway is 100% in some kind of van. Maybe not a Ford Fiesta that's been rented for 3 days. Oslo is nice though. I set my location on Hinge here, just to have a nosy at the locals. Massively upsetting. Big mistake. It's not good for my brain seeing too many beautiful people too quickly. I have a peasant brain. And I'm not ashamed to admit I don't know much about this city. Otherwise, just as the setting from the worst person in the world. The one thing I am adamant of doing today is seeing a staved church. So I hop on a bus to do just that. Even if all of these buildings have been dismantled from around the country and reconstructed timber by timber here in Oslo. But this is sightseeing at a highly efficient scale, right up my street. I asked an old flame who's actually been to Oslo for a fun fact. And I'm not sure this counts as fun, but you know what? I'm gonna run with it anyway. As I've mentioned, Norway is one of the richest countries in the world. Walking around Oslo, you can tell they have giant horses and 4 wheels to their carts instead of our 3. They have high taxes and in return have one of the highest standards of living in the world, measured by life expectancy, schooling and income in the Human Development Index. Index, or HDI. The reputation of the Nordics is green and progressive, but does it come at a cost? Because when you take into account ecological impact, CO2 emissions, material footprints, in the past 30 years, Norway has in fact become one of the most unsustainable countries on Earth. The Sustainable Development Index starts with the HDI, but takes into account such things as the impact from exporting fossil fuels, emissions from imports and consumption, flights taken for travel, etc. Essentially taking into account the entire ecological impact of a country in global terms, cross-reference with how developed they are in the customary sense. The lead of the SDI team, Jason Hickel, had this to say about the existing measure. HDI embodies a contradiction whereby the process of generating high levels of development in some nations constrains development and even drives de-development in other nations. For a development indicator that purports to be universal, such a contradiction is indefensible. So on the Sustainable Development Index, when the global ecological impact of a country is taken into account, Norway had a very low score in 2022. Their profitable North Sea adventure, where they drill for oil, even if the vast majority of the oil is exported, is not sustainable, nor is their levels of consumption. The ramifications of this index is that the standards we use to measure development are not wholly suitable for everyone. Countries can hide behind having green energy domestically. The majority of Norway's domestic power comes from hydroelectricity. They can pursue green policies, get ranked high on sustainability ratings like Oslo, finance higher standards of living, all the while exporting fossil fuels for other countries to consume and pollute the earth. Meanwhile, the global south suffers disproportionately from the effects of climate change, while contributing the least towards it and developing to a level that Norway have isn't possible. The game is rigged, it's greenwashing on a global scale, but I think it's maybe the hypocrisy that annoys me the most. Don't pretend to be green. I mean, take the fashion industry for example, which is estimated to be responsible for up to 10% of global carbon emissions. And that's more than international flights and shipping combined. In the modern era, this manufacturing was all exported from the West to Asia to produce, to save on costs. But does this mean that the West has become more sustainable? Because now they don't mass manufacture clothes anymore? No, it's the West's demand, which is the one driving the unsustainable production in the first place. It's still going on. It's now just done somewhere out of sight, out of mind. And Europeans or Americans can pat themselves on the back for being so green. We don't have polluting industries anymore. You know, like here in Oslo, we run everything by hydropower. We have an all-electric fleet of buses. Your country produces 2 million barrels of oil a day. And I don't mean to make this into any national argument. I mean, the UK isn't exactly any better. It's a global problem. It's a problem inherent with capitalism. Anyway, rant over. Time to consume. Well, obviously I've entered the Oslo fan zone for the Euros. It's Turkey versus Austria in the last 16 tonight. And even more obviously, the place is absolutely packed to the rafters with Turks. I think this guy might have had Turkey in the sweepstakes. There are even live presenters doing quizzes and challenges. Loving imagining trying to do this in England. We're a nation of fans who don't join in on Mexican waves at friendly games. And this guy ended up getting shit on by a bird. I swear on my life. Turkey are 2-1 up, holding on for dear life. A Gordon Banks-esque save in the final minute secures their victory. The master of ceremonies starts playing some Turkish tunes for the loyal faithful. I wouldn't like being one of those guys who films everything while they walk around and narrate. I'd feel like one of those audit nerds, or one of the various international sex offenders masquerading as travel YouTubers. These two didn't even ask me for a copy of their picture. They just wanted me to have it, and they are bang on for that, I tell you. The Turks. Can't help but love them. My time in Turkey last year was among my favourite of my entire global trip. Hospitality, good nature. I have no idea how my trip to Arctic Norway has ended up like this, but who's complaining?